Have you ever felt the terrifying moment when your own legs, the very pillars that have carried you through a lifetime of storms, suddenly refuse to obey the simplest command of your soul? I am Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and over the course of 30 years, after walking beside more than 30,000 souls in their most vulnerable hours, I have learned that the greatest tragedy of aging isn't the passing of time, but the silent, uninvited theft of one's dignity. I remember a cold Tuesday morning in Chicago when the wind was howling off Lake Michigan, rattling the window panes of my clinic. In walked Arthur Miller, an 82-year-old retired firefighter whose name was once synonymous with courage in the Windy City. This was a man who had spent 40 years charging into collapsing buildings, carrying grown men over his shoulders through thick, black smoke. But as he approached the chair in my office, I didn't see a hero. I saw a man engaged in a desperate, trembling war with gravity. His breathing was shallow, his face was etched with the exhaustion of someone who had fought too many battles alone, and his hands, those massive, weathered hands that had operated heavy hoses and saved infants from flames, were shaking with a frailty that broke my heart. He tried to lower himself into the leather chair, but his quadriceps gave way a few inches too soon, and he slumped back with a heavy, hollow thud. We sat in silence for a long minute, the only sound being the rhythmic ticking of the clock on my wall. Arthur looked down at his knees, his eyes brimming with a mixture of shame and bewilderment that no man of his stature should ever have to feel. He whispered, his voice cracking like dry parchment, "Sanjay, I spent my whole life being the one who catches people when they fall. Now, I can't even carry a gallon of milk from the car to the kitchen without my heart racing and my knees buckling. My grandkids want to play in the yard, and I have to watch them through the window like a prisoner. I feel like a burden, a heavy piece of furniture that everyone has to move around." This was the crisis I see in seniors all across the globe, a strange, progressive fading where the body becomes a cage. They are told by society that getting slower, weaker, and more tired is just the natural tax of living a long life. But as a doctor who has dedicated decades to the study of human longevity and regenerative nutrition, I knew Arthur wasn't just old. He was experiencing the catastrophic depletion of his vital essence, a condition that was stealing his independence before he was ready to let it go. I leaned forward, looking him directly in the eyes, and told him something that most of the medical establishment forgets to mention. "Arthur, your body isn't broken, and you aren't expired. It's just that the fire in your muscles has run out of the specific wood it needs to burn." I explained to him that something miraculous was happening to seniors who refused to accept this decline. People who were regaining their strength, walking for miles, and conquering stairs again after decades of struggle. The secret wasn't a cocktail of expensive synthetic pharmaceuticals or grueling hours in a gymnasium that would only further strain his weary joints. It was a forgotten, humble food, a simple gift from the earth that costs less than $2 a serving, yet possesses the cutting-edge power to trigger muscle restoration in ways we are only beginning to fully comprehend through clinical research. I told him about the emerging studies from the Journal of Nutrition and Aging, which revealed that seniors who introduced this one specific element into their routine before 7 o'clock in the morning saw a staggering improvement in their walking speed and muscle mass in as little as 14 days. I watched a flicker of hope, small, fragile, but real, ignite in Arthur's tired eyes. He had walked past the solution 100 times at the grocery store, never realizing that it held the molecular key to his second act. I described how muscle tissue isn't just about the weights you lift. It is fundamentally about the biological signals you send to your cells the very moment you wake up. For many of my 30,000 patients, the most critical nutrients are tragically missing by the time they finish their first cup of coffee. I told Arthur that if he could commit to this one simple change, we could reverse the shaky legs and the constant fatigue that made his life feel like a slow retreat. We talked about how the body, even at 82, still possesses a remarkable hidden hunger to rebuild itself if given the right metabolic handshake in the early morning hours. As he left my office that day, he didn't walk any faster yet, but he carried himself with the weight of a man who finally had a map out of the wilderness. I knew that in just 2 weeks, the retired firefighter who couldn't carry milk would be discovering a strength he thought was buried forever under the ash of time. This was the beginning of his resurrection, a journey from the silence of the firefighter back to the roar of a life fully lived. A few weeks after Arthur's visit, I found myself in Savannah, Georgia, sitting on a sun-drenched porch with Eleanor Riggs. Eleanor was 76 years old, a woman whose life had been spent among the quiet, towering shelves of the city's oldest library. She was a woman of intellect and grace, but as we sat together, I watched her gaze longingly at the vibrant azaleas at the edge of her garden, just 30 feet away. For Eleanor, those 30 feet might as well have been 30 miles. She told me with a voice that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken sorrows that she had begun to feel like a ghost in her own home. "Sanjay," she said, clutching a cold cup of tea with thin, translucent fingers, "I used to walk 3 miles every morning through the park. Now I look at the 3 steps leading down to my garden and I feel a paralyzing fear. My legs feel like they belong to someone else, someone much older, someone who has already given up." I saw the way she looked at her own reflection in the window, searching for the vibrant woman she used to be, only to find a shadow of herself. It wasn't just physical pain, it was the psychological erosion of her independence, the slow realization that the world was shrinking around her. I sat closer to her and spoke with the gentle authority of someone who has studied the blueprints of human decay for 3 decades. I told her that what she was experiencing had a name, and it wasn't just aging, it was sarcopenia. This is the scientific term for the progressive loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength, a condition that the National Institutes of Health warns can begin its silent work as early as your 50s. By the time a person reaches 70, the loss of muscle tissue can accelerate into a landslide, claiming up to 15% of a person's total strength every single decade. I explained to Eleanor that her body wasn't failing her because of a lack of will, but because of a biological drought. When sarcopenia takes hold, the muscle fibers actually shrink and are replaced by fat and connective tissue, making every movement feel like an uphill battle. This is why climbing stairs takes more effort than it ever did before, why balance feels like a precarious tightrope walk, and why even light bags of groceries feel like lead weights. Even for those who try to stay active, the body loses its ability to bounce back because the fundamental machinery of muscle repair has stalled. As a researcher who has spent years analyzing clinical data, I shared with her a hard truth. Muscle tissue isn't just powered by exercise, it is fueled by the signals you send to your body the very second you open your eyes in the morning. For many seniors, the most vital nutrients are completely absent from their breakfast tables, leaving their muscles in a state of constant starvation. I described to her how the body, when deprived of specific amino acids at dawn, begins to scavenge its own tissue for energy, a process that only accelerates the very weakness she feared. Eleanor listened with an intensity that told me she was ready to fight back. I told her that we weren't just going to manage her decline. We were going to halt it. The solution wasn't hidden in a laboratory or an expensive prescription bottle. It was waiting in the simple, overlooked chemistry of her own kitchen. We were going to reclaim those 30 feet to her garden, one morning at a time, by feeding her muscles exactly what they had been screaming for during years of silent starvation. I promised her that sarcopenia was not a life sentence, but a biological challenge that we were now equipped to solve. Back in my research office, I often reflect on the thousands of patients who have come to me seeking a miracle, expecting a high-tech solution that only a modern hospital could provide. Yet the more I study the intricacies of human longevity at places like Harvard and through clinical trials in Japan, the more I am humbled by the power of simple, natural interventions. There is a profound beauty in the fact that the most potent tool for reversing muscle loss in seniors costs less than $2 a serving. We are talking about the deep, dark, and humble black bean. It is not a trendy superfood with a massive marketing budget, but it is a biological powerhouse that has been shown in the Journal of Nutrition and Aging to support muscle repair, reduce systemic inflammation, and boost protein synthesis without the need for a single dumbbell. This bean is uniquely high in leucine, a specific branched-chain amino acid that acts as the master key for the body's muscle-building pathways. In aging bodies that have become resistant to traditional protein sources, leucine is the only thing that can jumpstart the engine of regeneration. I have seen the data firsthand. Seniors who incorporate this simple plant-based source into their daily breakfast see significant improvements in their muscle mass and walking speed within just 14 days. What makes the black bean truly revolutionary for the elderly is its gentleness. Unlike many commercial protein powders or heavy meat-based diets, it does not overwhelm the kidneys, which often become more delicate as we age. It doesn't cause the digestive distress or the blood sugar spikes that can lead to chronic fatigue and inflammation. Instead, it reawakens the muscles by signaling the body to begin the repair process precisely when muscle regeneration is most active, right after sleep.
Its natural fiber and rich antioxidants act like a broom, sweeping away the low-grade inflammation that is often the hidden culprit behind stiff joints and poor circulation.
For a senior living on a fixed income or someone who simply wants to age with grace, this is a miracle sitting quietly on a pantry shelf, waiting to be more than just a side dish. I tell my patients that their bodies aren't broken. They are simply waiting for the right fuel. The black bean isn't just a food. It's a message of hope for anyone who has been told that their best days are behind them. It fits into almost any dietary restriction, whether you are diabetic, heart conscious, or vegetarian, because it works with the body's natural chemistry rather than against it. Most people still believe that recovery must be difficult, expensive, or painful. But the truth is often much kinder. I've watched men and women who could barely walk to their mailboxes find a new spring in their step simply by changing what they eat at 7 in the morning. This deep, dark little bean is making headlines in clinical nutrition circles for a reason. It triggers muscle regeneration in aging adults who had previously given up.
It is the humble catalyst for a life reclaimed, a reminder that nature provides everything we need to stay strong, steady, and independent well into our 80s and 90s.
In the heart of Austin, Texas, I met Samuel Evans, a 79-year-old former construction worker whose body was a map of a life spent in hard labor. Sam was a man of steel and grit, but the years of heavy lifting had left him with chronic fatigue and a stiffness that made every morning feel like a battle against a rusted suit of armor. He sat in his kitchen as the sun began to peek over the horizon, his large, calloused hands resting heavily on the table. "Doc," he told me, his voice a low rumble. "I feel like an old machine that's been left out in the rain too long. I wake up and my legs feel like they're made of concrete. I used to be the one who built the skyline, and now I can't even get out of bed without a groan that wakes the whole house." Sam's pain wasn't just physical, it was the quiet, gnawing fear that he had become expired, a man whose utility had been used up by the world. He looked at the clock, waiting for the day to be over before it had even begun.
I explained to Sam that the secret to his recovery wasn't just what he ate, but when he ate it. I told him about the power of 7 a.m., a time when the human body is at a biological crossroads. After an overnight fast, the body's circadian rhythm dictates that muscle tissue is at its most receptive. This is the golden window when insulin sensitivity is higher and nutrient absorption is at its sharpest. By eating black beans at exactly this hour, Sam would be providing his muscle cells with a steady stream of amino acids exactly when they were primed to repair. This isn't just theory. It is backed by a 2022 study published in the Journal of Applied Gerontology, which showed that seniors who added just one daily serving of black beans saw measurable increases in lower body strength within 2 weeks. For a man like Sam, who had spent his life working with the rhythms of the sun, the idea of biological timing made perfect sense.
I told him that by eating his beans warm and lightly seasoned at dawn, he was essentially flicking a metabolic switch. Instead of his body breaking down its own muscle for energy, a process called catabolism, it would transition into a state of growth and repair. We talked about how black beans stabilize blood sugar, which for a senior is about much more than just preventing diabetes. It's about reducing the oxidative stress that causes tissue breakdown and ensuring that his energy levels don't crash by noon. Sam started to see his breakfast not as a chore, but as a high-performance fuel for his machine. He began to realize that he wasn't broken. He was just out of sync with his own biology. As the Texas sun rose higher, I saw a new determination in his posture. He wasn't ready to be retired from life. He was ready to rebuild one 7 a.m. breakfast at a time, proving that even a 79-year-old heart can find a new rhythm when given the right fuel at the right moment.
Martha Stewart, a retired school teacher from Portland, Maine, lived in constant fear of the hardwood floors in her own home. At 84, she had experienced 3 falls in a single year, each one chipping away at her confidence until she felt like a prisoner in her own living room. When I visited her, she spoke of the terrifying nighttime cramps that would seize her legs, leaving her gasping in the dark. "It's like my muscles are trying to knot themselves into a ball," she whispered, her eyes wide with the memory of the pain. "I'm afraid to move, Sanjay. I'm afraid that if I take one wrong step, I'll end up in a nursing home, and I'll never see my books or my piano again." Martha's struggle was a classic case of what I call the silent mineral drought. I explained to her that she was likely among the 70% of older adults who are dangerously deficient in magnesium, a mineral that acts as the conductor of the body's electrical system. Without magnesium, the muscles cannot relax. They stay in a state of constant tension, leading to the twitches, cramps, and stiffness that haunted her nights. I showed her how just half a cup of cooked black beans delivers nearly 30% of her daily magnesium needs, acting as a natural shield for her nervous system. This mineral is responsible for over 300 biochemical reactions in the body, including muscle contraction and nerve signaling. By nourishing her body with this humble bean, she was literally calming her frayed nerves and giving her muscles the lubrication they needed to function without seizing up. I told her that this wasn't just about nutrition, it was about regaining her sovereignty. We sat at her kitchen table and I showed her how to prepare the beans. Warm, soft, and easy to chew, so that they became a comforting ritual rather than a medical requirement. I explained that the potassium in the beans would work alongside the magnesium to restore the electrical balance in her cells, reducing the risk of the sudden misfires that lead to falls. Martha began to understand that her weakness wasn't a character flaw or an inevitable part of being 84. It was a biological deficiency that had a simple, elegant solution. We talked about the peace of mind that comes from knowing your legs will hold you steady when you stand up to greet a friend. Within days of starting her new morning routine, Martha reported that the nighttime knots had begun to loosen. She started to trust her body again, taking small, cautious steps across the room without reaching for the furniture. The magnesium shield was working, giving her back the independence she thought she had lost forever. For Martha, the black bean wasn't just a food. It was the key that unlocked the door to her freedom, allowing her to dream of walking along the Maine coast once again. I have often told my patients that the difference between a medicine and a poison is often found in the preparation. This is especially true for the black bean, a food that is a fortress of nutrition but can be difficult to access if you don't know the secret handshake. I remember explaining this to a group of seniors in a community center, many of whom complained that beans made them feel heavy or bloated. I told them that the discomfort they felt wasn't the fault of the bean, but of the way it had been treated. To unlock the muscle-building power of the black bean without the digestive cost, one must master the art of the soak. I advise them to always start with dried beans when possible, soaking them overnight in a bowl of water with a pinch of baking soda or a splash of lemon juice. This simple act breaks down the lectins and phytic acid, the anti-nutrients that plants use to protect their seeds, but which can block a senior's body from absorbing vital minerals like magnesium and zinc. I describe the process with the detail of a chef and the precision of a doctor. Simmer the beans in a low-sodium broth until they are tender and soft, usually about 45 minutes. You don't need a fancy pressure cooker, you just need patience and a little bit of care. For those who are short on time, canned beans can be a lifesaver, but they must be rinsed thoroughly under cold water to remove the excess sodium and preservatives that can trigger the very inflammation we are trying to cure. I told them to add a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil and a pinch of cumin or turmeric, spices that have been used for centuries to aid digestion and reduce joint pain. This is how you transform a simple ingredient into a high-performance medical intervention. I watched as their faces changed from skepticism to curiosity. They had been told for years to avoid beans, and now I was telling them that prepared correctly, they were the fountain of youth. I also warned them about what to avoid. Pairing these powerful beans with processed white toast or sugary cereals is like putting water in a gas tank. It spikes insulin and cancels out the blood sugar stabilizing effects of the beans. Instead, I encourage them to pair the beans with stabilizing foods like sautéed spinach, avocado, or a slice of whole grain toast. This creates a complete nutritional profile that supports not just the muscles, but the bones and the heart as well. I explained that skipping breakfast is perhaps the most dangerous mistake a senior can make, as it forces the body to eat its own lean tissue for fuel. By making black beans the first thing they put into their bodies, they were restarting their metabolism and giving their muscles a reason to stay strong. It's a ritual of self-love and biological wisdom. I saw them nodding, realizing that they held the power to heal themselves right in their own kitchens, provided they followed the ancient art of preparation. While the black bean is a miracle on its own, I have discovered in my 30 years of practice that every hero needs a partner. For the aging body, that partner is the humble, whole egg. Together, they form what I call the dynamic duo for reversing muscle decline. I remember explaining this to a gentleman who was terrified of cholesterol, having avoided eggs for nearly 20 years based on outdated advice. I looked him in the eye and said, "Sir, what was once labeled dangerous may now be your most powerful ally in the fight for your strength." I explained that while beans provide the fiber and the leucine, they are missing certain bioavailable proteins and healthy fats that the aging digestive system needs to function at its peak. A single soft-boiled or poached egg provides 6 grams of complete protein rich in methionine and cysteine, amino acids that your body simply cannot produce on its own, but desperately needs to rebuild muscle tissue. The protein in eggs is absorbed with incredible efficiency by seniors, far better than red meat or processed supplements. But the real magic is in the yolk, which I call a treasure chest of geriatric nutrition. It contains vitamin D to support calcium absorption for brittle bones, and choline, which is essential for the neuromuscular communication that prevents falls. It also holds selenium to protect against oxidative muscle damage, and lutein to support the eyesight that gives a senior the confidence to move. I shared with him a 2020 meta-analysis from Nutrition Reviews, which found that older adults who ate eggs at least 4 times a week showed significantly greater muscle mass and gait stability, the ability to walk with a steady, confident stride. When you pair the egg with the black bean, the fiber in the bean slows down the digestion of the egg just enough to create a steady, hours-long release of amino acids. This prevents the spike and crash of energy that leaves so many seniors feeling exhausted by mid-morning. I told him to imagine his muscles receiving a constant, gentle stream of building blocks throughout the day rather than one big hit that the body can't handle. We talked about how this combination also supports gut health and helps the body absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. I encouraged him to enjoy half a cup of warm beans with 1 or 2 soft-boiled eggs, a drizzle of olive oil, and a sprinkle of black pepper. No fancy recipes, no expensive powders, just pure, powerful nourishment that the human body has recognized for millennia. As he listened, I saw the fear of dangerous foods melt away, replaced by the realization that his body was starving for the very things he had been told to avoid. The dynamic duo wasn't just a meal, it was a prescription for a longer, stronger, and more vibrant life. Henry Thompson, an 81-year-old former mail carrier in Denver, had a simple, heartbreaking goal. He wanted to walk the 2 blocks to the cemetery to visit his wife's grave without having to sit down 3 times. When I first met him, he hadn't made that walk in 2 years. His muscles had atrophied so much that his legs looked like thin reeds, and he walked with a shuffling gait that spoke of deep physical defeat. "I've given up, Doc," he told me, his eyes fixed on the floor. "The body just goes when it wants to go, I guess." I told him about the 14-day resurrection, a timeline of healing that I have seen play out in thousands of lives. I told him that if he started the black bean and egg ritual tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., his body would begin to whisper back to him within 72 hours. By day 3, the amino acids would be reawakening the dormant fibers, and the shaky tremble in his legs would begin to settle as his blood sugar stabilized. I explained that by day 7, he would notice something remarkable. He would be able to walk 5 minutes longer without needing to stop. These aren't just coincidences. They are biological signals that the body hasn't given up, even if the mind almost had. I shared a 2019 study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which proved that older adults who ate a high-leucine plant-based breakfast saw significant improvements in grip strength and walking speed in under 2 weeks, even without changing their exercise levels. By day 10, the magnesium and potassium from the beans would restore the mineral balance in his muscles, ending the nighttime cramps and improving his sense of balance the moment he stepped out of bed. The anthocyanins and polyphenols, the dark pigments in the beans, would be working like a microscopic cleanup crew, reducing the inflammation that made his joints feel like they were full of glass. I told Henry that by day 14, the most unexpected change would be his confidence. He would start to trust his body again, reaching for things without hesitation and walking without calculating every single step. His posture would improve because his core muscles would be reactivating, holding his frame with a renewed dignity. Henry listened, and for the first time in years, he didn't look at the floor. He looked at the door. I knew that the resurrection of his strength was already beginning in his mind. 2 weeks later, I received a phone call. It was Henry. He was out of breath, but his voice was clear and strong. "I'm here, Sanjay," he said. "I'm at her grave. I walked the whole way, and I didn't sit down once." That is the power of fueling the body intentionally. It's not just about adding years to your life. It's about adding life to your years, proving that no one is ever too old to stand tall again. Once you have fueled the engine with the black bean and egg dynamic duo, you must give the body one final signal to ensure those nutrients reach their destination. I call this the post-meal pulse. I remember teaching this to a group of seniors who felt that exercise was a young person's game. I told them, it's not about burning calories or lifting heavy iron. It's about opening the cellular gates. According to a 2021 study in the Journal of Geriatric Physical Therapy, light movement within 30 minutes of a high-protein meal significantly increases the uptake of amino acids into the muscle tissue. When you move even slightly, your heart pumps a bit faster, your blood flow increases, and your muscle fibers stretch and contract, sending a clear message to your brain. We are rebuilding. Send the supplies here. Without this signal, those precious nutrients might just sit in the bloodstream or be stored as fat. I shared a simple 10-minute routine that anyone can do right in their living room, even if they have joint pain. Start by marching in place for 60 seconds, swinging your arms gently to get the blood moving. Then do 30 seconds of forward and backward arm circles to loosen the shoulders. For those who can't stand for long, I suggested seated leg extensions, lifting one foot at a time while sitting in a sturdy chair, holding it for 3 seconds, and then lowering it. Do 10 of these per leg. Then try wall push-ups by placing your hands on a wall, stepping back, and gently lowering your body. This routine isn't about strain, it's about circulation and neuromuscular activation. It's about reminding the nerve endings that have been quiet for too long how to talk to the muscles again. I've seen this simple habit transform the lives of people who thought they were too far gone to move. I told them that this pulse builds habit strength, creating a rhythm that the body begins to expect after every morning meal. Even seniors with limited mobility can do a modified version, focusing on range of motion rather than speed. The benefits go far beyond muscle strength. Post-meal movement improves digestion, insulin sensitivity, and even mood. It prevents the sugar crashes that lead to midday fatigue and ensures a better night's sleep. I watched as they began to move their arms and legs right there in the room, a collective awakening of 20 or 30 bodies that had been told to take it easy for too long. I told them, don't wait until you feel strong to start moving. Move now, and the strength will follow. The post-meal pulse is the final piece of the puzzle, the spark that turns the fuel of the black bean into the fire of a revitalized life. As I stand here today looking back at the 30,000 patients whose stories have become a part of my own, I am struck by a single powerful truth. Strength was never truly lost. It was only waiting to be remembered. We have been sold a lie that aging must mean a slow, painful decline into weakness and dependency. We have been told to accept the fading of our muscles and the shrinking of our worlds as an inevitable fate. But my experience, and the science from Harvard to Tokyo, tells a different story. Your body is a masterpiece of resilience, a biological wonder that is listening to every signal you send it. Every bite of black beans at 7 a.m., every soft-boiled egg, every 10 minutes of gentle movement is a message to your cells that says, I am not done yet, I am still here, and I am still fighting. I have seen men like Arthur and women like Martha reclaim their lives from the brink of despair, and I know with every fiber of my being that you can do the same. The path to your second act is paved with simple, affordable choices. Stop skipping breakfast. It is the most expensive mistake you can make for your muscles. Stop relying on a handful of synthetic pills to do the work that real whole food was designed to do. Instead, turn to the humble black bean, this $2 miracle that can stabilize your blood sugar, shield your nerves with magnesium, and rebuild your fibers with leucine. Remember the dynamic duo of beans and eggs, and never forget the post-meal pulse that brings it all to life. These aren't just tips, they are the pillars of a life lived with dignity. I want you to ask yourself today, what else have you accepted as inevitable when it was actually within your power to change? If a simple bean and 10 minutes of movement can restart your strength in just 14 days, imagine what the next year of your life could look like. You don't have to navigate this journey alone. I have dedicated my life to uncovering these truths because I believe that every senior deserves to walk, reach, and live without fear. I am calling on you today to take action. Don't wait until tomorrow morning to decide that you are worth the effort. Go to your pantry, find those beans, and set your alarm for 7 a.m. This is your invitation to a resurrection. If you found hope in these words, if you felt a spark of the strength you thought was gone, then please join our community. Subscribe to this channel so that we can continue to walk this path of healing together. Share this story with someone you love who feels like they are fading, because hope is the only thing that grows when you give it away. Your body hasn't given up on you. Don't you dare give up on it. I am Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and I promise you, your best days are not behind you. They are waiting for you at dawn. Subscribe now, and let's start your 14-day journey together.